For aspiring professional Melee players, being talented enough to be included in the coveted top 100 rankings is the dream that they strive for the most. But figuring out exactly what it takes to be in consideration for these rankings can often be confusing for players to determine. So with this video, I wanted to go over exactly what it takes to be in contention for the top 100 rankings by discussing the qualifications and looking at the years of players who just barely made it into the top 100. So first off, let's take a look at the attendance requirements. The team behind the 2017 ranks said the baseline for having players to be considered was attending 4 majors or 3 majors and a significant local attendance for players in North America, or attending 3 majors or 2 with significant local attendance for international players who have less access to majors. However, these are just guidelines and not hard rules. So for example, if a player had an insane performance at a major but just barely missed out on the requirements, they would still be considered for a shot. So then this leads us to the question, what events are considered majors? For the ballot, majors were determined by using a modified version of Practical Tasks' event rating system, which uses factors such as number of entrants, size of pot bonus, and level of talent in attendance to determine an event's ranking from S to C. So using this system, there are 22 non-invitational events in 2017 that were considered majors for the ballot. 5 of these events, called super majors, were considered to be in a class of their own above all the other majors because of the depth of talent that attended these events. As you can see from the chart, these events fell mainly near the west or east coast, making it hard for players not living near these areas to travel to. But when we add in all of the majors, the map becomes much fuller and gives North American players who might have other obligations or smaller disposable incomes much less of an excuse to not make it out to at least 3 of these events. Syndicate in the Netherlands, B7 in Sweden, and Air 4 in the UK are not pictured, as they're the only 3 majors outside North America, which gives an insight about how hard it is for international players to attend just the 2 majors required to be considered. The concern is heightened even more by the fact that B7 was said to be the final installment in the tournament series. So we can conclude from this that there is essentially at least a small monetary and time investment required to attend enough events to be considered a top 100 player. But attending 3 or 4 of these events by themselves isn't enough. A top 100 player needs to end up placing significantly well at least one of these events. Creating a guide for what should be deemed placing significantly is hard to do because the depth of talent varies at events, as does the number of attendees. So I've chosen 5 players who ended up near the lower end of my top 100 ballot, so we can take a look at these placings and see about where an aspiring top 100 player should be looking to place at these bigger events. So from this chart, we can see why people don't like using placings as a sole metric for a player's skill. For example, Homemade Waffles placed worse than 3 of these other players at Genesis 4, but he has much better losses than any of these 3 players at the event. Even with this in mind, we can see a general pattern starting to form. At super majors like Genesis 4, the Big House, and Shine that can often be laden with upsets, a player should be aiming to place at least 65th place. For normal majors like Royal Flush and SmashCon, players should be aiming to finish around 33rd. These placings may seem hard to achieve, but when we instead look at a player's records at the event instead of their losses, it looks a whole lot more achievable. A player should be aiming to get about 5 or 6 wins at these events to be placing well enough for the top 100. And getting placings with records like these is bound to net a player some valuable wins, so let's take a look at their resumes for this year. From this and my time looking through other players' years for the 2017 rankings, I think we can see 3 archetypes of players emerging. The first is players like Reeve, L, and Lovage, who've one really fantastic win and not much else on the resume for the year. The second is players like Ralph, who've gotten a lot of wins against the old guard, but haven't gotten to play much against, or have lost a lot to the other candidates. And lastly, we have players like Kaon, who've gotten most of their wins this year off of good players who are also in contention for the top 100, but not much off many who were in the previous top 100. Obviously, there are players who really don't fit into these mold or look like a combination of a few, like Homemade Waffles, but these are 3 general outlines of what a top 100 player's resume should look like. And the last factor in determining if a player makes the top 100 is their notoriety. A lot of top players complain about how much this factors into if a player makes the top 100 or not, which is a fair complaint to have, but I don't think it affects the rankings as much as they say it does. A player's visibility in the community is often tied significantly to if they are able to make an upset or get good placings at an event, so a lot of this does come back to in-game performance. With ELO-based ranking systems not being a perfect fit for Melee, this issue that exists with the ballot system is something that top players are becoming more and more aware of and are taking more measures to counteract, which is moving towards minimizing the issue further and further. But it does and will still exist for next year's ranking as a factor in determining a player's chance at the top 100. And yeah, that's about it for this video. I think I've given a full picture on the more statistical side of what numbers a player needs to put up to make the top 100. I purposely avoided being like talking about like what practice players need to do or something else, because I'm barely qualified as a statistician, but I'm definitely not qualified to tell you melee training routines or stuff like that. I would go, if you're interested in something like that, for looking to be a top 100 player. Now that you have the numbers and you've got a point to chase after, you should look at people's streams like Ginger or someone of those rising players, stuff like that, who he's always responding to chat and can give you that advice. Or look up, I know Lod has made tons and tons of guides about like what you need to improve in melee. Look up those guides. That's the resources you should be looking for to look at what you should be improving to be a top 100 player. You should not be looking to me. I'm a stats guy. I'm not an in-game, playing the game kind of guy. Yeah, I just wanted to add that little disclaimer here at the end. But also I want to give thanks to my Patreons. Ryan McLean was actually the one who gave me the idea for this video. I was like, this is like pretty cut and dry first, but then when I dove into it, I really enjoyed the topic and how it turned out and what it ended up being. And I also want to thank my other patrons, Nick Fade and Nathan Simon, just for donating. Just another update, I haven't talked about Patreon in the end of my videos for a while. If you donate, you're getting the videos early. These guys got the video a day before you, and they also every month get to pick topics for the video. So if that sounds like something you'd be interested, you could go over, just give $1 and you get the video early. Another thing, I just got affiliate status on Twitch for streaming my ballad. It added up to me enough viewers and stuff like that. So I have an open spot for a Twitch emote for people who would maybe want to sub, if that's once another way you would possibly want to give me some income to help me out with this. So if you have any suggestions or ideas, you can leave them down in the comments. Or if you have like an image or something you think would work cool for an emote for me, send it over to me on Twitter. I'd love to hear your suggestions, see what you guys want. Make it as memey as possible, or at least as interesting as possible that it will entice people to sub to me. And yeah, I just kind of plug myself at SaveAsUntitled over on Twitter if you want to tweet that stuff at me. And if you want to follow and get previews of videos, I usually tweet out stuff when I'm like some of those Photoshop graphics and stuff like that. I'll tweet out early. And also follow me over on Twitch. I want to stream a little bit more, probably not playing the game, as I mentioned earlier. I'm not a player. I'm a stat guy. So maybe I'll stream the process of making videos or something else, or maybe just like chatting to you guys after a big tournament like I did with the Holiday Bash. But I think that's about it. So I've been SaveAsUntitled. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I'm getting back to making videos more, I promise. And I'll see you guys next time.